All right, so we're looking at aggregate expenditures, and AE, remember, is C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. And we found the formula for consumption spending. It was 5 plus 0.6Y. And we found the formula for investment spending. It was 75. And we found the formula for government spending. It was 160. Now, that's C plus I plus G, so we can add those together. And to add C plus I plus G, we take the 160, the 75, and the 5. These are the numbers that do not contain Y, and we add them together. And we get total autonomous spending of $240. Then we add all of the numbers that contain a Y in them. And the only one of these three formulas that has a Y is the consumption spending with the 0.6Y. So C plus I plus G is 240 plus 0.6Y. Now notice that government spending is autonomous, so when we add government spending to our C plus I, all we're doing is shifting up the graph by the amount of government spending. So remember, C had an upward slope, but I was autonomous, so we just shifted up the C graph, and now we're shifting it up even further by adding government spending. So now we want to look at the X minus IM, the last part of our aggregate expenditure formula. So let's look at net exports. Net exports are exports minus imports. Now, exports are when the goods go out to other countries and the money is coming in to ours. So export spending is done by people in other countries. And since export spending is done by people in other countries, it does not depend on our income. So you'll notice for our data that export spending does not change when income changes. It doesn't depend on our income. Now, import spending is where we bring in goods and the money goes to other countries. So we're buying goods from other countries. And it is dependent on our income because when our income is zero, there's a certain amount of import spending we do. Things we need that we can't get here at home even though we have no income. So things like importing gas, or maybe there's necessities, certain foods that are necessities that we can't make here. So when our income is zero, we're still going to import some goods and services. And in this example, it's about $40 worth. Then as our income increases, you'll notice that we import more goods. So when we graph import spending, we expect there to be autonomous imports, in this case, 40. And then as income increases, that import spending increases. We can plot this against the export spending to see if we have a trade surplus or a trade deficit. So if exports are not changing with the amount of income, then we can see when exports are higher than imports and when imports are higher than exports. If our exports are more than our imports, then what that means is that more goods are going out than are coming in. Remember, exports, we make money. Imports, we are spending money. So if exports are more than imports, then we have a trade surplus. Money is coming in. If exports are less than imports, then other countries are buying less from us than we are buying from them, which means our money is leaving the country and we have a trade deficit. When we look at net exports, often denoted X with a little n, we're talking about exports minus imports. So if your exports are bigger than your imports, you have a trade surplus, you're going to have a positive net export. If your exports are less than imports, so imports are bigger than the exports are, you're going to have a negative net export. So where are we right now? How are we doing in Canada? Do we have a trade deficit or a trade surplus? Let's take a look here. And in June of 2017, we had a trade surplus with the US, and it's the highest it had been in 3 years. So for 2017, we've had a trade surplus. So what we're going to do first is we're going to graph our imports and our exports separately, like on this graph that you see here, and then that'll help us understand whether we have a trade deficit or a trade surplus. Then what we're going to do is we're going to actually calculate net exports, and that's going to help us with aggregate expenditures. So it's easier to do exports minus imports together first before you start adding C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. So if we do this as a bundle, then it makes it easier to find aggregate expenditures. We can also then look at what's changing the net exports. So first we'll graph exports and imports separately, and then we'll graph net exports.